sets, so you can create your own, just create your own rules.
I was just to check what
stuff like
the
that.
magic function how it works.
That's the best one.
And maybe it's
I tried to get my kids started. My youngest was, yeah.
Alright,
He was good with
you guys
math.
started again? You guys ready?
Yeah.
Grab some pizza, have a seat.
And he was quickly modifying the JavaScript that he would be given in STM classes. He was taking off, and I'm like, oh, he's got the potential. And he's like, yeah, he just wanted to be in musicals. Okay, you know.
Whatever makes you happy. Right?
Exactly, and so I'm fine with that, you know, as long as he's happy.
You introduce the idea.
Hey, we're out of the show. Alright. Alright. Hopefully everybody's queued up with some pizza. Alright, let's see how this goes.
So polymorphic relationships, is that kind of like, is that kind of like autoloader? Yeah,
Are you shaking his head no? What
autoloaders?
No,
Oh, no, it's not like autoloader.
no, polymorphic is basically,
Is it?
it's being defined in a table what the class is going to be.
Yeah.
That's associated, that is this data.
Right, so it's not a straight one-to-one relationship, or even a one-to-many. It's not like posts are related to users, or posts or tags are relating to stories. It's,
Yeah.
you know, multiple things can relate to tags. Is kind of what a polymorphic is.
Right, so it finds the thread of keys that go through,
Now, I don't know if it would find, it would eventually find it, yeah, but that's not the relationship, that's part of the model that's doing that.
Based on his example of the comments and posts, a comment would have an ID number, but that ID number is it for a image or is it for a post? We don't know, but the next field will probably define what the class is.
Right.
And so then it knows what object to create, of course, what gets pulled, what data gets pulled from where,
okay.
what gets loaded.
So this will be a good talk. You may want to step up to a relationship talk.
Yeah.
This stuff, especially this polymorphic stuff, we had Tom did one a while back that was really good.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll do another. That's why I said as I started making these slides and I started getting deeper and deeper into the relationships, I'm like, man, I can spend 10 minutes on each one of these, and it's going to take this slide's going to go for days. So.
And yeah, polymorphic relations are cool, but it does get complex. You know?
All right, so we're trying to get back on track here a little bit. I'm backing up just a little here. So we did a couple things, but the key thing that we did is we defined some very basic relationships here, right? We defined our user relationship to post, and we let our post relationship also know about our users. So very, very simple, and we showed some simple ways that we could use that. But with that very basic definition, we actually get some nice baggage with our model now. So what this means is now we have something available to us called eager loading. So with eager loading, what we can do is we can grab post. Let's say we're working with post, we're going to display a post, and we can tell it, hey, with this post, give me the user. Give me my user relationship with this post. Is this okay? Should I turn up more lights? Are you guys seeing this okay? Okay.
I can see it.
So I say with this post where ID is 1, give me my user. And you can see down here, the top part is my post, and then you see another entry here for my model for my user, and it says user associated with this post. And now this is always available to me. What's even cooler about the eager loading piece is had I just called post, where I said post find 1, and return to me the post, although I don't see the eager loading here, I don't see that the author has been included in here, if I just echo out post user name, because I know that's the relationship that's there, it automatically kicks out that user for me. So eager loading is fantastic. Once you have those relationships defined, that data, that luggage follows you around. That's another reason why you might want to be a little careful about how many relationships you have defined, but it's a nice little side effect to have.
That's not
What's that?
That's not necessarily eager loading unless you added it to your model as.
This?
That's actually lazy.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, this is lazy loading, this is eager, yeah, this is lazy loading here, I'm sorry, that changed my slide there.
And also in that case, it will do 2 queries, right? As
No,
opposed to-
this is all, you see it right here, this is what it is.
This
Yeah,
is,
but
yeah, but
this
the,
case
but
it
the,
would
two, the
be-
2 queries are being done, yes.
Yeah, it would be.
Yeah, the background's doing two queries.
That's what you
Yes,
said.
but your example before, when you actually eager loaded, that
It's-
one would do 1.
Right.
That'll do one.
So this is basically doing it.
That's
doing
eager,
it-
that's eager loading.
Yeah,
So that's a good thing.
yeah,
You wanna try to do that, right? As opposed to.
If you need it.
Yeah.
right, right. Which is, might be one of the things we're questioning.
But you can't define in your model, I think, there's a width, but you need to be careful with that too, because you can get into a loop
Right,
if you have a self-referential model somewhere.
Don't use it.
right. Okay, so in one of our examples before, we're gonna talk about fillables, and you can think of fillables as a whitelist. So in one of our samples before, you saw the is admin, this is where we're gonna get to that stage. So this is our current user table in our database. We have ID, name, email, password, and everything is admin, create and update, pretty straightforward. If I create a new user using this method where I new up a new user model and I give it name John, email John data, password is admin1, and I do a save, I get a true response here. So
Why are you sharing my password?
I feel like
And it's on the 360 cam.
I'm pretty confident that that this record got saved. But what we'll do is we'll go to the database. We're going to do a select count where the user name is John Condon and his admin is 1, and we get a count back of 1. So okay, I'm good. I see my record saved. All right. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to create a record here, but I'm going to use a different method. I'm going to use a mass assignment. And so I'm going to create a record here for Marcus. He has a very long domain name. Not sure what that's about. But I'm going to go ahead and assign him as his admin as well. So I give him a record of 1. But I see in my mass assignment, when I get my return, something doesn't look right here. I mean, his name's there. His email with that really weird long domain is there.
No, what doesn't look right is the S is lowercase. It should be.
Yeah, I know. I followed that, but I didn't want AS. And it just looked weird. So I didn't want to do it. But yes. And this is actually, your eyes start to wonder. It looks like he's a fish lover.
Or an elfish lover. I
Yeah,
don't
he's
know,
an
elfish lover.
I'm not sure what. He's a weird person. But anyways, this just doesn't look right. Our return doesn't look right. So we go ahead and we do our count. We do Marcus Moore, and we do is admin 1, and we have a count of 0. So something went wrong. We go ahead and pull up the record. The record itself was created, but his is admin is null. The reason for this is because we used a method called mass assignment for Marcus's record. When you're doing a mass assignment, you have to define what it is you're allowing to be assigned, mass assigned. This is called fillable in your user model. So we're back in our user model. Currently, it's only set to name, email, and password. So no matter how much I try to force that is admin in there, unless I explicitly created the record, it will not accept it as a mass assignment. To correct that, we're just going to go ahead and delete Marcus from our life.
The fish lover?
Yes. We'll go ahead and add the is admin as part of the fillables in the user model. And if we run the exact same query, we can already see that this worked, right? We have our is admin. So this is assigned. This is kind of the idea implemented to help protect. So as you're pumping in records, you have these processes that create a lot of records that you still have some restriction on exactly what fields they can fill out without explicitly calling those fields. I question, the benefit of this personally. I'm All right, so we'll get to that. So the reverse to this is a guarded approach. So if the fillable approach is a whitelist, think of a guarded approach as a blacklist. You typically wouldn't have both of these in your model, you'd have one or the other.
That's a requirement, really.
Huh?
That's really a requirement. You pick one or the other.
Right. Yes, technically, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So in this scenario, is admin would be the only thing you could not fill as a mass assignment in the record. Everything else would be fillable. So is admin would be the one thing that is guarded. I am actually guilty, and I try not to do this, but I find myself doing it as creating guarded empty arrays because I am lazy and I don't necessarily see the benefit of having to explicitly protect certain columns. I'm sure there is, maybe somebody can explain it to me, but in general, I'll have empty arrays.
If you're using a RESTful API, which you might just be getting a
And
block
somebody's
of
pushing
data
it.
and you're just gonna push
Yeah.
it instead of trying to map every single
Yeah, I
column.
can see that, yeah.
Yeah,
So
because also,
that's when we would use those.
Yeah, that's true, that's true.
and commonly in a lot of Laravel examples, you take like the request object, you say request, get all the data, pass it in,
Yeah,
and
you
then
do
what's
like-
not fillable gets excluded, but, you know, if you're not guarding anything, then everything can be dumped.
But the
Right.
trace Laravel request all, update request all.
Yeah.
And then somebody could just add another column to
Carolyn?
it.
Does that guarded have anything to do with when you're seeding a table, the unguarded and reguard?
No.
Yes.
It
I mean,
can,
the
yeah.
season
Yes, it does.
table runs through the same models. So,
I've seeded tables without them.
The unguard turns those off.
she's right, you can see the table with that model, because you actually find the table in the seed.
But,
Yeah.
but unguarded turns those off.
Yeah.
If you
So
don't
if
use,
they are
if you don't use unguarded, you're doing updates, then it will, you'll miss those calls.
Right. So when you run your migrations, especially your seeds, a lot of times at the top of the database seeder file, you'll see there's a call to unguard there. Okay, I'm sorry, John, did you have something else you want to say?
I was confused by that. You have access to the data even though the model's not there.
Yes.
I do know.
For seeding, yeah, it's like the migration, I think, right? I mean,
The migration.
No, if you don't have a model class, you have to have a model class.
Yeah, so.
yeah, he's right, actually, I was thinking about the migration, because there for a while we were seeding things through migration, but,
The whole unguarded.
the actual
the
seed
unguarded
doesn't
allows
run the
you to
model.
seed every field.
Yeah.
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 And, yeah. Yeah, it's-
I would
yes.
never.
You use, but you're using DB, you use DB table, because you use DB table, which is not a model.
Okay, so we're gonna move on to one of the things that I learned about. These are scopes. And I felt so silly when somebody showed me scopes, because I had been doing a lot of the work myself. And then somebody introduced me to scopes, and it completely changed the way I structured my data and accessed my data. Again, we're in the user model here. The naming convention does apply. It's scope and then the name of the scope. So in this case, it'll be called Diego Dev. What we're going to do is just a query. So this basically gets applied when you call this scope to a user model call. If you call this scope, the Diego Dev scope, it will apply this to that query. So all it's doing is applying a where clause, email, and it has a diegodev.com email address. So by defining this scope, I'm able to do something like this, where I can say Diego Dev Peeps, app users, Diego Dev Kit, and just basically this would return everybody in my database that I have who has a Diego Dev email address. Super simple. I mean, this becomes so simple. Think about, other scopes, and we're going to get into them. One scope we're not going to talk about is a global scope. So there are global scopes. I explicitly didn't talk about those because there's components of the global scope that breaks out of the model, and I didn't want to get too far away from models. But just keep in mind, if these scopes interest you, there are also global scopes that you might find interesting. Go ahead.
Out of curiosity, you're calling Diego Dev there. What if you had has Diego Dev as an option? So we have scope Diego Dev. What if we had a Diego Dev table and it was has Diego Dev?
Then you don't need the Diego devs.
Yeah, I'm not
No,
sure.
I'm wondering how the scope is different from has and is there precedence?
Yeah, this is just an example that I came up with. Other things you might use it for is, scope is admin, for example, something like that. Which
I guess
one
my question is, do you know what the precedence is? So if I had has posts and scope posts,
Yeah.
is there a precedence there?
It does both.
Yeah.
It'll do both. Yeah. They'll basically find.
So
if
doing this
if
user
you said
posts.
app user has posts, Diego
No,
Dev.
not has, I'm saying app user posts.
We're not talking about post here at all.
This is user.
Oh, but you-
What if it was has Diego Dev and scope Diego Dev?
There is no has Diego Dev. What is that?
Say if there was. a
If there
table.
was a table,
Called Diego Dev?
if there was a relationship,
Right.
or you had a scope of post, is there a precedence?
This is not the syntax for has.
Yeah.
What is
Has and then relationship and name in quotes. So they wouldn't be confused.
No, what he's talking about is like, let's just say, Dago Dev doesn't really work, but if Dago Dev was a relationship,
From the user to the
yeah, so there was a model called Dago Dev,
Yeah.
and you had a scope called scope Dago Dev on the user model, what would
So you had user and you had arrow Diego Dev.
Oh.
Okay, I don't know.
That means that you're a bad programmer.
I have no idea.
I don't know how to play.
It'll treat it, I know that if you don't have the parentheses on there, then it's gonna look at it as strictly a relationship.
If you had a relationship. and-
But this isn't a relationship.
I know,
Yeah.
but if you didn't put the parentheses, it would look at it as if it were a relationship.
Is that your question? What if it was a relationship?
Yeah, if it was a relationship and
But that
a
syntax,
scope.
that syntax is different. So.
But it would create a
No,
problem,
I
it
mean,
would,
it's-
no, he's right, it would
Yeah.
create a problem, because then if you try to then access the query of the relationship, right? You use the parentheses on your relationship, you can then apply additional
Right.
query criteria.
I'm not
They're,
gonna-
they're all magic methods.
That's the problem, that's what I was
Yeah.
asking, if you knew offhand.
Yeah.
Nah,
Yeah,
I don't know
yeah.
which order they go in.
The answer could be, I don't know, we'll look at it.
I tried saying that a few times, but you guys kept talking. I don't tell you, so I don't know.
Don't do that.
All right.
Relationship.
So we have local scopes. We talked about there's a thing called global scopes. There's also dynamic scopes. So we'll create another column here called roles, and users will have different roles associated to them. This is still all in the users table, so it's all still part of the users model. But instead of defining this explicit scope like this, we're going to define a scope that's a little bit more dynamic. Again, these are very simple examples. There are more complex questions we could ask, but we're going to keep it simple here. So again, the naming convention is still scope of. So this is the scope of role. The role is the column in the database. We're going to give it a query and we're going to give it a type. And then we just want to return where role equals type. And what that ends up looking like is, and this is where the dynamic piece comes in, we can say give us all the users who are organizers, and this will kick out. But we can also say give us all the users who's a presenter, that would kick out, and then we can say give us a user who's a member. So that's kind of the dynamic aspect of it.
I've got to ask a question that I keep on asking in my mind. The number 783 and number 784 and number 785, those are collection IDs or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, no. I don't know what the.
I believe it is, I think it's just a.
I mean, that would make sense. That's so many things,
I've seen those numbers. I never really paid attention.
Yeah, I just don't know. We can find out though.
I think that is the case though, it's just the ID.
What's the purpose of it though? And can you use that in any way?
Well, you wouldn't necessarily need to look at it here, but the dumper will. You know, like if you look at like even like the Symphony dumper, you can see that there'll be objects that are repeated, and so the references, right? And so it'll have the same ID number throughout your dump because it's actually pointing back to the same ID.
Right, so yeah, that is something to keep in mind. This is not a JSON response. So if I was returning this on as a default return on the web page, it would be a JSON response. Since we're in Tinker, it's kind of dumping out the object for us so we can see it. So typically you wouldn't see these numbers.
So now we can see how long in between the Tinker requests took the screenshots.
Yes.
All right. Mutators. Okay? So again, there's always this person. There's always this person who, doesn't follow convention when they're typing. So we're going to go ahead and create this record. We're going to jack up the input, and it's going to completely mess up our normalization of our database. Well, we've got Marcus here. I don't know how he is. But this son of a bitch, he has uppercase last name, lowercase first name, and his whole email address is uppercase. This is frustrating. It's frustrating. You can actually have this addressed with very little effort. It's called a mutator. So once again, we're still in the user model. So all these things have been in the user model. We haven't had to really take it, with the exception of the guarded fillable. Those are the only two things that couldn't coexist in the user model. Because besides that, everything else we're doing can all coexist in the user model. We don't have to pull anything out. Naming convention here is pretty straightforward. It's set the column name attribute. So what we do with the name, because we don't have a camel casing it, we don't know what they're doing, we're going to take the value, we're going to go string to lower, and then we're going to uppercase the first letter of each word. For email, all we're just going to do is go string to lower. So now this knucklehead types in this stuff incorrectly again, and it gets normalized in my database, and everything looks nice and clean, and I'm very happy, except for this entry here from Marcus, which still bugs me. But this all gets entered perfectly.
Well, it bugs you because you didn't apply it to your mutator.
I know. I created this before I did the mutator. I know. And this is just one of those really nice to haves. It doesn't take a lot of extra effort to do it. It saves you so much time as opposed to having to manually do it every time you go to insert data in the database. You just make it part of the model, and it knows every time it goes in the database, it's going to run it through those attributes. We had a user, or the client I was talking about earlier, who has this Visual Basic database that we're tying into. I don't know if this is a Visual Basic thing or not, but they had for the user table, they had name, which was first name, last name, and then they had a column, first name, and a column, last name, right? So for creating a record, they just wanted to be able to type in the name. They didn't want to have a field for first name and a field for last name. They just want to type in the name. So I actually created a mutator that when they typed in their name, it would take the first word, it would make that the first name. Anything after the first name, it would make the last name. And then I ran it through the string to lower, and then uppercase